Welcome to Tales by GB. Hello and welcome, dear listeners, to another heartfelt story from your favorite folktale channel, Tales by GB. If you're new here, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button and don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment. We bring you original African folktales and true-life village stories filled with tears, wisdom, betrayal, and sometimes beautiful, unexpected redemption. Let's dive into today's story. It's a story of a woman, a mother, a fighter named Veronica. A tale that will make your heart break and then rise again with hope. Now sit back, relax, and let the story begin. Veronica was a poor woman. Not just poor, she was one of the poorest women in the community. She lived in a rundown corner of the town where the walls were cracked and the wind slipped through the holes of the wooden doors. People barely noticed her, and those who did, they barely respected her. They judged her. They whispered. They rejected her. Most people who lived around that area never loved her. They didn't even like her. In fact, she was more hated than helped. Why? Because of her past. But Veronica, she didn't let it break her. She kept moving forward. She kept her head down, her hands busy, and her eyes focused on survival. She didn't care what people said about her. She had made peace with her story. So she decided to start afresh by applying for a job as a waitress in a big hotel in town. Surprisingly, when she applied, she got the job immediately. And just like that, Veronica began working. She served food daily to hungry customers who barely looked her in the eye. She smiled when no one smiled back. She worked hard, every day. But the money she earned was never enough. It wasn't enough to feed her twin daughters. Yes, Veronica had twins. Two beautiful little girls who were her only joy in this world. You see, their father had left Veronica before she gave birth. And the reason? Because he didn't want female children. Yes, his name was Matthew, and he was a wealthy man, but a wicked one. When he discovered that Veronica was pregnant with twin girls, he kicked her out. Just like that. Why? Because Matthew's parents had always desired a male child. A son who would inherit Matthew's fortune and become his heir. But things didn't go as planned, and Matthew, listening to his parents' foolish pride, threw Veronica out of his heart and out of his house. He abandoned her. He dumped her by the roadside, pregnant and alone, to suffer. She had nowhere to go, nowhere to sleep, no one to run to. That was 6 years ago. Veronica had been working at the hotel for a few months now. Though she hadn't seen the owner of the hotel, she never cared. She just focused on her duties. Every day, she cleaned the tables, served the food, and kept moving. She never saw the boss. No one really did. And the workers used to wonder, who owns this hotel? But Veronica didn't care. She didn't join the gossip. She wasn't there for fame. She was there to survive. She had 2 mouths to feed, 2 young hearts to protect. So she hustled, bussed tables, cleaned plates, and at the end of every night shift, she would quietly gather the leftover food from the customers' plates. Yes, the hotel was a big one. So many customers, so much left over. She packed it all. Fried rice, turkey meat, jollof rice, garnished soup. She packed them carefully in a large nylon bag, and she carried it home. That was how she fed her kids, because the salary from the hotel wasn't even enough for her alone. It couldn't clothe her. It couldn't clothe the kids. It couldn't pay school fees. So she made a decision. Her family would live on leftovers. She would sacrifice her pride to feed her girls. Day after day, month after month, this became her routine. The girls went to school. They smiled. They were happy, even though they had no father. But one day, everything changed. The return of Matthew. It had been over 5 months since she started working in the hotel. Still, she had never seen the boss until that hot afternoon. A black SUV pulled into the hotel compound. The boss had returned, but no one could recognize him because he was dressed like a celebrity. He wore a designer face mask and dark eyeglasses. He looked very wealthy, very polished, very handsome. When he entered the hotel, he called the manager and ordered, "Gather every staff. I want a meeting, now." The manager obeyed and gathered all the workers in the main hall. But Veronica was late. She had been downstairs, eating some leftover food because she was hungry. When she heard the announcement, she quickly cleaned her mouth, straightened her uniform, and rushed upstairs. She was the last to enter the hall. And the moment she opened the door, the first person she saw was him. Matthew, her ex-husband, standing there, leading the meeting. Her heart dropped, her body trembled, her knees almost gave way. Matthew saw her and smirked. Then he turned to the manager and said, "Do we have a new employee?" The manager replied, "Yes, sir. That's Mrs. Veronica, our new waitress." Matthew laughed bitterly. Oh, he had been a heartless man. Now that he knew she worked here, he would surely punish her. After the meeting, just before the staff were dismissed, Matthew pointed and said, Yes, you in black, the waitress. Go downstairs and wash my car. You have just 10 minutes. Veronica looked confused. She replied softly, "But sir, I'm not the security guard." Matthew shouted, "Do you want to lose your job? Don't forget who I am." He walked out, leaving her speechless. Humiliation in the parking lot. Veronica had no choice. She went downstairs and began washing the car. She bent, she squatted, she scrubbed the tires. Then Matthew walked close to her and said, "Wash the tires very well." He kept looking at her, and from his eyes you could tell he was still in love, but it was buried under layers of hate and ego. As she scrubbed, she softly said, "Sir, don't you think it's time you meet your children? They're twins, beautiful girls. You left us, but they're doing well." Matthew hissed and walked away angrily. Later that same day, he whispered to the manager, "Before the sun sets, I don't want to see that woman in this hotel again." He drove off, and hours later, Veronica received her sack letter, dismissed. Veronica stood by the manager's desk, holding the white envelope in her shaky hands. Her eyes scanned the short message, just a few cold lines. No explanation, no apology, no pity. She had been dismissed, fired from the only job she had. And just like that, her source of income was gone. The leftover food she brought home for her daughters, gone. Her ability to pay their transport fare to school, gone. And deep inside her, she knew this wasn't just a random sack. It was Matthew, her ex-husband, the same man who had once left her in the middle of the road pregnant. The same man now owned the hotel and had used his power to crush her again. Veronica walked out of the hotel, her eyes flooded with silent tears. She didn't cry out loud. She couldn't, because crying wouldn't change anything. She had 2 children waiting at home, 2 little girls who depended on her for survival. She had to stay strong. Days passed, then weeks. No new job came. Every door she knocked on closed. People rejected her. Some mocked her. Others told her to stop dreaming, that she wasn't good enough for employment. Soon, her small savings finished. There was no more money to buy food. Not even to buy gari. Veronica tried to manage. She would boil water and pretend it was tea. She would break dry bread into tiny pieces to share between her daughters. But that couldn't last. She knew she couldn't hide the truth any longer. So, one afternoon, Veronica took a brave but painful decision. She called her 2 daughters, held their hands, and they all walked out to the streets to beg. Yes, Veronica, a woman who once had hope, was now standing by the roadside, begging for coins. Her daughters sat on the pavement, their eyes tired, their bodies soaked in sweat. Sometimes it rained. They had no umbrella. Sometimes the sun was too hot. They had no shade. And every time they asked for help, some people ignored them. Some insulted them. Some threw coins at them like animals. But still, Veronica endured, because her children were all she had. Every small amount she gathered, she would use to buy 1 plate of rice. And guess what? She never ate. She gave it all to her children. She would sit in the corner, smile at them, and say, "Eat, my angels, Mommy is not hungry." But she was hungry. Deeply, painfully. She would go to bed with an empty stomach, hiding her tears under the pillow. Her body became weak. Her skin became pale. Her smile became thinner. But her love never reduced. The day it rained and destiny came. It was a cold afternoon. Dark clouds gathered above the city. Veronica and her daughters had taken their usual spot near the traffic light. She sat on the roadside, clutching her torn handbag, watching the clouds. Her daughters curled beside her, tired, hungry, and cold. Then, the sky opened. Heavy rain. People ran into nearby shops. Cars drove past, splashing dirty water. But Veronica and her daughters had no place to hide. They sat there, getting soaked, trembling in silence. And then, a black SUV slowed down. The window rolled down. A deep, calm male voice asked, "Excuse me, what are you doing under the rain with these kids?" Veronica lifted her head slowly. Water dripped from her hair. Her lips trembled. She couldn't speak. The man looked closely. He saw the weak children, the mother's pale skin, their wet clothes. He quickly stepped down from the SUV. Come inside. You're not safe here, he said. He opened the car door, helped them in, and drove off. The Mansion of Mercy. Veronica was dizzy. She had no energy left. By the time they arrived at the man's mansion, she had fainted. The man rushed her inside, laid her gently on a guest room bed. He turned to the girls. You'll be fine. Let me get you something warm. He went into the kitchen, served them warm fruits and tea. Then he gave them clothes, dry, soft, and clean. The girls were amazed. They had never seen such a big house, never sat on such a beautiful couch, never watched cartoons on such a big TV. Everything felt like a dream. Later that evening, Veronica opened her eyes. She sat up, confused. The bed was soft. The room smelled of vanilla. Where am I? She whispered. She slowly walked out and found her daughters laughing on the couch, watching TV with the kind man. He turned, smiled. You're awake, he said softly. Come, sit, I made you food. Veronica stared at him. Who are you? She asked. My name is Lancelot, he replied. And you are safe here. A gentleman's heart. As they ate together, Veronica told him everything. She told him how her ex-husband Matthew had abandoned her, how she was fired from her job, how she fed her daughters with leftovers, how they ended up on the street. Lancelot was quiet. He listened deeply. Then he said something she never expected. From today, you're free to stay here for as long as you want. Veronica blinked. What? Yes, you and your daughters, stay here. No rent, no stress, just peace. She burst into tears, tears of relief, tears of shock, tears of healing. Lancelot, a man she had never met, had done more for her than family. Days passed. Then weeks. Veronica cooked in the house. The children were enrolled in school. Lancelot became a father figure. One day he took them shopping. Veronica wore a new dress. Her children smiled in new sandals. They walked into a big mall, picking clothes, snacks, and toys. But guess who was also at the mall? Matthew. And his current wife. Veronica paused. She stared. Her heart froze, because standing beside Matthew was her own sister. Veronica froze. Her hands dropped the shopping bag. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Standing just 10 feet away in a glowing red dress, arm in arm with Matthew, her younger sister. The same Stella she had once protected. The same Stella who used to cry on her shoulder. Now, she was standing proudly beside the same man who had ruined Veronica's life. Veronica's body trembled. Her heart raced. The mall suddenly felt colder. Her children didn't notice. They were still admiring the candy aisle. But Lancelot, he noticed everything. He saw Veronica's eyes fill with tears. He followed her gaze, and there he saw it, Matthew, and a woman who looked too much like Veronica. The resemblance was clear. It couldn't be a coincidence. He gently walked closer to Veronica and whispered, Do you know her? She didn't answer at first. She simply nodded. Her voice was stuck in her throat, but her eyes, they said everything. Flashback, the sisters' betrayal. It was 6 years ago. Veronica and Stella had grown up like twins. They were barely 2 years apart. They shared clothes, shared food, shared secrets. Stella used to say, Veronica, no matter what happens, I'll always be loyal to you. Veronica believed her. Back then, when Veronica had gotten pregnant for Matthew, she was happy, innocent. Stella was the first person she told. Stella cheered for her, even helped her cook for Matthew sometimes. But as months passed, something changed. Veronica began noticing how Matthew would look at Stella, how he would smile more when Stella entered the room. She brushed it off. It's just my imagination, she told herself, until the day Veronica got kicked out. It happened fast. Matthew came home one evening, furious. He threw her bags out, yelled at her, told her he didn't want daughters. She cried, begged, held his feet, but he pushed her out. She called Stella, her only sister, the one she loved. But Stella didn't pick. She called again and again. Still, nothing. She waited outside her house for hours, but Stella never came. That was the day Veronica realized her sister had betrayed her. Veronica stood there, frozen. Her sister, the one who turned her back on her, was now married to the man who caused her the greatest pain. It was as if her chest was being ripped open all over again. Lancelot gently touched her shoulder. Do you want to leave? She nodded. They gathered the children, left their cart behind, and walked out of the mall, quietly. Matthew and Stella didn't even notice them. They were too busy showing off, too busy pretending to be a happy couple. In the car, a silent drive. Lancelot drove slowly. He kept glancing at Veronica through the mirror. Her face was pale. Tears rolled down her cheeks, silently. Her daughters had fallen asleep in the back seat, but Veronica was awake, broken. She finally spoke. "Her name is Stella. She's my sister, my blood." Lancelot tightened his grip on the steering wheel. "And she married the man who abandoned you?" "Yes," Veronica whispered. "She was there the day he kicked me out, but she said nothing. She helped him throw me away, like trash." Silence filled the car again. Lancelot didn't respond immediately. He was trying to control his emotions, because deep down he was angry. Not just at Matthew, but at the kind of world that allowed women like Veronica to suffer while heartless people prospered. Lancelot's secret connection to Matthew. That night, after dinner, the kids had gone to bed. Veronica was sitting quietly on the balcony when Lancelot walked up beside her. He looked at the moon, then said, "I never told you something, but maybe you should know." She turned to him, confused. "I went to high school with Matthew. We were in the same class." Veronica's eyes widened. He was arrogant, proud, always talking about money. "But we weren't close. I kept my distance, and now I'm glad I did." He paused, then added, "I didn't know he was your ex. If I had known, I'd have found you sooner." Veronica smiled faintly, not because she was happy, but because in all her life, no man had ever said something like that to her. "I'm just grateful," she said softly. "Grateful that someone like you still exists in this world." Lancelot looked at her, then said gently, "Veronica, you deserve better, and I won't let anyone, not even family, hurt you again." A new plan begins to form. The next morning, Lancelot made some calls. He arranged for private tutoring for the girls, bought new clothes for Veronica, fixed up a small business space for her without telling her yet. He had a plan. He wanted Veronica to rise again, but not as a beggar, not as a victim. He wanted her to rise with dignity. Meanwhile, Matthew and Stella began to hear whispers. They heard someone had picked Veronica from the streets, that she now lived in a mansion, that she was dressing better. They didn't believe it. "Impossible," Matthew scoffed. "She'll come crawling back one day. She's nothing without me." But deep down, he was afraid. Because for the first time in years, Veronica wasn't begging. She was rebuilding. Subscribe to Tales by GB so you never miss an episode of Veronica's Tears. This is not just a story, it's a lesson. A folk tale of resilience, betrayal, and rising above all odds.